Welcome back. In this video, we have to cover a couple very recent updates. So 3 or 4 days ago, I was exploring around in Homebrew on Linux. They call it Linuxbrew, and I'm learning how to do various things. And I was going to create a brew tap, and I was actually going to call it Fabric-AI, like this. And last night, I was getting back into it, and all of a sudden I discovered there was a Fabric-AI now. So they must have actually just installed a formula, which means not a custom tap, but an official application being installed or integrated into the Homebrew ecosystem. So the Fabric guys, Miesler and the gang, they created a formula in Brew so that you can now install Fabric on your system without having to go to the GitHub repo, without building it with Go, without downloading binaries, none of that anymore. You can just do it through the package manager of Homebrew, which again on Linux is called Linuxbrew. The command looks just like this after you have Brew installed. So to install Brew, there's going to be a dedicated video in the future. I had already planned on it for package management in Ubuntu beyond what apt is able to do. So Homebrew is for Mac and Debian and other based Linux, like the AUR is for Arch. You know, it's kind of community built and maintained, not by the makers and maintainers of the distro. So, you know, the Debian elders that maintain apt and decide what's included in apt, they decide what gets integrated into the apt package management system. And with Homebrew, it's more community-based. So the Fabric guys actually took the time to do it. So if you were to go to brew.sh, it would bring you to the Homebrew page. And we're going to go over this in detail in a near future video. But just to give you an idea of how you install Homebrew on your system, on an Ubuntu system or any Debian system, you would copy and paste this line right here into your terminal. And then there's a couple things that you would have to do after that, and it comes right up in the instructions when you install Homebrew to put a line into your bashrc, which will source the Homebrew directory at its install location and all that stuff. Like I said, we'll go through that. If you already have Homebrew or Linuxbrew, now you can install Fabric in a direct way. And you'll see what I mean here. So first off, we have to go in and we're going to move the existing Fabric tool that we have in our .local bin, which is right here. And you could do this at the command line where you just use the MV, the move command, and move it to a different directory within Ranger. Just because I want to show you this quick, within Ranger, I can just move it over into cold storage. And just to be clear, I'll rename that the old Go build. So now I have in cold storage, I have the Fabric old binary download and the Fabric, the old Go build version. So now the Fabric tool is out, and going into .config, the Fabric folder that was built by the old tool, just in case I have something important that I didn't here, I'm going to save that. So I'll change it to fab.4. These are for various demonstrations, and when I make changes to the Fabric directory and the changes, I might want to go through it real quick and see if there's anything I did that was important in there. So I've just been renaming that directory and saving it as different versions. That's why you're seeing the fab.1, 2, 3, and 4. But now we've just essentially removed the Fabric CLI tool from our system, or at least our system's path. It won't find the Fabric tool anywhere anymore. The command not found. So this is just like having fully removed Fabric from our system. Actually, there's one more thing we got to do for installing Fabric with Linuxbrew or Homebrew. We're going to want to go into our bash aliases file, or your bashrc, if that's where you kept your any Fabric aliases. If inside the bash aliases file, if we go down to where you would have the Fabric aliases or alias, so I had aliased F to Fabric, and so this would have to be changed to -AI, because that's the name of the tool when you install Fabric using Homebrew. And just to make everything work, we would do Fabric also, just so that if I type out the word Fabric, the keyword, that it'll still pull up the tool. So we'll alias both of them to Fabric-AI, so that F or Fabric we'll call up the Fabric-AI tool via Homebrew installations. And so we'll just refresh our terminal and we'll get back to things. So now we've removed any binaries or executables or Go build versions of Fabric from our path, and we've either eliminated or changed any aliases that we have to Fabric. But we still have nothing on the system. If we were to type F or Fabric, it should say command not found, because now the alias is pointing to Fabric-AI, -AI, which is what we're about to install on the system using Brew. Brew. So once Brew's installed, like I said, you can explore doing this on your own, or if you can't figure it out, you'll have to wait for when I do a dedicated video to that, because I'm going to. Brew's a very, very awesome, useful secondary package manager to stack on top of the apt package manager. So we'll do brew install fabric-AI, and now it's downloading what they call the formula. You know, with the Homebrew, the whole metaphor they have running, the formula is an actual registered package with them. If you did a brew tap, it would be because the GitHub repo or the GitHub project that you're wanting to maintain and keep updated automatically would have to be registered through your own custom brew tap. So now we have Fabric on the system. To make sure, we can type which fabric-AI, and it'll bring up Fabric is in some bin directory in Linuxbrew directories dedicated to those installs from Homebrew. Now that we have Fabric-AI installed, as evidenced by running the which command, and it locates Fabric, which bin directory it's being made in the path system-wide executable run from, and we have our aliases, so we should be able to type F or Fabric, -H, the help menu. And so now we have the tool installed from Homebrew, and we have it working normally, as in running the F or Fabric commands. You can, feel free to use Fabric-AI. It's just a couple extra longer reach keystrokes. So that's how you get this done, because I noticed this just last night or yesterday in the GitHub repo, going down to installation, and now they had this section right here, and they're also in the AUR. If you're on Arch, the AUR, I guess, kind of is to Arch what Homebrew is to Debian, Ubuntu, Mint, and others. That's not to say, a long complicated story. I'm pretty sure you can put the AUR on any Linux distribution, but that's mixing base package managers, and that's a topic for a whole other discussion, really. So staying focused here. This is the Brew install, and so now with Fabric installed through Brew, now it will maintain the updates on the Fabric tool. And the reason that's important, it's not just an update of a new method of installing Fabric, but you can see here we have a couple new flags, the strategy and list strategy flags. So now that this tool's on the system, we're going to run it for the first time. We'll run the setup. We have to set up, Olama and the default model. We have to download the patterns, and now we have a new one, the strategies. And it actually says it's required. Downloading the strategies. So real quick, we'll just do, and again, this one says 1234 V1. And I honestly, I don't know, maybe Olama put up this second one. Who knows? But at any rate, we know 11.434 works. So now we have Olama configured. 14 to pick a default model. We'll go with 7, Mistral 7B. Leave the context window alone. Then the patterns, we need to download the patterns. See how the numbers have changed now, where 13 used to be configuring the default model, because they've added in through the plugin system, not the extensions, but the plugins. I believe if you mess with the plugin system, that's how they add or take away things out of this menu. They've added something. It might be Light LLM maybe or something like that. But now the default vendor model is now option 14, and patterns is now option 15. And so you accept the defaults here, just like we've always done. And the last one that we have to configure just to get this off the ground, we'll have to re-input our YouTube keys and our Gina keys. So if you need to know how to do that, just look up the previous video dedicated to finding and installing those keys. But now we need to configure number 19, which is the strategies. And this is going to be just like downloading the patterns, just accept the defaults. And so now we can drop out. And you know what? It doesn't say configured yet. Let's see if just doing it twice. Now it says configured. I had to run number 19 with the default selections twice. And the first time I did this is only the second time I've done this. The first time I did this, I remember now that I had to do that twice before, and I thought maybe it was just a glitch at the time. Now it's 2 glitches in a row. Nothing major, just run it again. It's not a big deal. But I did notice that if you run it once and you see it doesn't say configured, just run it again. And I know for a fact that works, because this is the second time now that I've done that. And so now, if we were to type fabric-h, and we have the patterns installed, and we've covered a bunch of these flags already, and now these two, I'm just going to cover them real quick because they are more basic and they're kind of like using patterns and context. So I'm just going to cover them real quick in this video to get back up to date, so that in our next video we get to the advanced level flags part 1 and 2. dealing with pretty much the remainder of the flags, like the variable, config, and then all of the model hyperparameters. And then after that, the extensions and the server and the GUIs. So, we're nearing the finish line here. So I'm just going to throw these 2 strategy flags in with this video on how to use the new installation method of using the Homebrew or Linuxbrew package manager. So to use the strategy flags, let's just do the first one. Obviously is going to be the most useful for you the first time out of the gate. Type fabric -- list strategies, and these are the preloaded strategies. Those are located, once we ran the tool for the first time, it created another fabric directory for us in .config. Contexts, extensions are empty, so is sessions. Patterns is populated. Now there's up to 214 of the patterns that come with the tool, bundled with the tool. And now there's a strategies folder that has some JSON files. You take a look at these, this is just what they look like. There's not a lot to them. It's just another instruction set. And so running the actual strategy flag, we could type fabric strategy equals, and we will pick COD, which is chain of draft. It's, I believe, chain of draft. I should look into this before I go saying these things, but chain of thought is a specific type of method for the LLM to follow. And this will be inserted, I believe, and we'll check it when we're done. It's inserted before the pattern in the system message, I would think. And the chain of draft, I believe, is for it to verbalize its chain of thought so that you get to see its chain of thought, I think. And we'll explore all that. But to use the flag, we'll just use -- strategy equals COD. Then we'll do, I don't know what our favorite question, right? Why is the sky blue? We'll do -sp and we'll do raw query. And so this is what we get. We get a stepwise reasoning process. So this isn't a very useful example, but I'm showing you how to use the 2 new strategy flags and how they're used. So if we were to run that again real quick using dry run, you'll see right here in the system message, here's the strategy, and it's it's a very brief 5 words max for each step, and then right after the strategy comes the pattern and then the user message. And we see here the user message is only input once, so it looks like they might have fixed that bug that I had found in the video just before this one, which would probably be, it was probably posted, I probably published that video a day or 2 before they made this change in the GitHub repo. So it looks like they were very likely to have already known about it. So I'm only seeing the user message once right here. So that's just the real quick and skinny on this. The new install method and using the 2 new strategy flags. In the next video, we'll get right back to where we left off, which is going to be going into, what I consider to be the more advanced flags in terms of the why you're using them, what it is you're doing is more advanced. Using the flags it's very, very simple.